we're ready to start talking about machines, and the first machines I like to start talking about are the ones we use for cross-cutting. When you're building a project, one of your first steps is going to be to select your wood, your boards that you're going to use, lay out your pieces on them, and then we'll start chopping them to length. And we use this Radial Arm Saw, We use this for cross-cutting only really to rough length in our shop. We don't have this set up very precisely, and it gets a little bit, moved and abused and stuff. And so if we're making a real precise crosscut, we'll either use the table saw or the miter saw. But for just getting a big board down and making it smaller into manageable pieces, that's what we're going to use this for. Now, a radial arm saw is very versatile. Like if this was the only machine you had, you could actually get quite a bit done. What we are going to use it for, and just grab a board here. We're basically going to use it specifically for cross-cutting. But if we wanted to, we can actually move this arm to an angle, and we can cut miters with it, like for a picture frame. We can tilt the blade, so it'll cut like a bevel cut. We can cut a bevel cut at an angle, compound miter. We can raise the blade and put a dado blade on it and cut like a little dado, a notch that your shelf would go into, that sort of thing. We can pull the blade out and spin this thing and use this as a fence, and we can actually rip with it like a table saw. There's a lot we can do with it. Very versatile, but we have better ways to do all those things I just listed that are, for whatever reason, they're easier for us to do it that way, or they're better, they turn out better, higher quality. And so with this machine in here, all we do is cross-cut to a rough length with it. I'll go over the rules. Number one, observe a 6-inch safety margin. Now my marker's kind of faded a little bit, but we've marked out 6 inches on this side and 6 inches on this side. So your hand should never be within 6 inches of the blade while it's turned on. Number two, the blade should be lowered a 1/16 below the surface of the tabletop. Number three, only cross-cutting operations should be done on the one in our shop. Number four, cut no pieces that'll cause you to break the safety margin. Number five, small pieces that number four refers to, like that will cause you to break the safety margin, you need to either somehow, like you could cut this board shorter and clamp it right here, and then you don't have to have your hand in there, or we can have some sort of holding fixture jig that would hold that so our hands don't have to be in there. But we don't want our hand in the 6-inch safety margin while the blade's spinning. Number six, make sure that the stock is against the fence before you start your cut. If you have it out here away, when that blade hits it, it's going to pop it back real quick. If you have your finger behind there, it's going to get pinched. So we're going to be tight against the fence. We're going to, we're basically just going to keep our fingers, make sure our fingers are outside the safety margin, and then we're going to extend our arm real stiffly so it doesn't take off on us. The miter saw is actually, or the radial arm saw is one of the more dangerous machines we have, in the sense that the blade is spinning the same way that we're actually traveling with it, which makes it kind of dangerous. It wants to kind of take off on us sometimes. Well, I'll show you how to run it, but basically you're going to keep this arm real stiff and go nice and easy. Don't let it go too fast. Just be real tough with it. I like to either have your hand on the handle on what you're going to pull, or I like to have it locked in while the blade is spinning. I don't like it just to be spinning and just hanging out with nothing holding back first. That's the way I like it. So whenever we make our cut, we're either going to lock it. I'll show you a little clip of that. We're either going to lock it in on this knob, or we're going to have our hand on it. Now we're not supposed to wear long sleeves when we're running this thing, and I'm actually getting kind of warm anyway. Take off this itchy blouse. Okay, so let's pretend I'm gonna cut right here. So I'm gonna pull down. I'm gonna unlock the knob, and I'm gonna line that up, And then I gotta make sure this is pushed back before I start it. And if I start it with that on my board, it's just gonna take off right away. So I'm gonna make sure that's pushed back. There's a start and a stop. So I'm gonna push the start, then when I'm done, I'll push the stop. I better get rid of this pin though. Okay, so I'm gonna hang on to this. It's already unlocked, so I don't have to worry about that. And I'm gonna push the start, then I'm gonna make my cut, then I'm gonna push it all the way back, stop it, and lock it. Okay? Make sure my hand's out of the safety margin. All the way back. Start off, then I lock it down. Just waiting for the blade to stop. When I'm done with my cut, I don't want to reach my hand in there to grab my scrap while the blade's still spinning. That's going to break that safety margin. So I'm going to wait till that blade stops spinning, and then I can take my cut. And then, this isn't really safety, but I feel like we need to talk about this now. So when you make your cuts, you might be cutting the end of your board off because we never use the very end of the board. That's just going to be trash. I'm going to try and have a box right here that we'll throw that in. Sometimes I'll burn that, but it needs to end up in the trash. If you've got other pieces of your board that you're not using, if you think you might use that later on, like farther down on your project, then just keep it with your stuff and just know you're going to use it later on. Otherwise, we'll put it with our regular scraps. Okay, another saw we use for cross cutting is the miter saw. We've got this 12-inch sliding double bevel compound miter saw. It's a nice one. It's real nice. We're going to treat this kind of with the same safety rules as the radial arm saw. So it's got a circle here. We're going to stay six inches away from the blade, which is basically outside of that circle. So when we're going to hold our board tight against that fence, but we need to hold it outside of that circle, so we're outside of the 6 inches. One difference between this than the radial arm saw, it actually makes it safer, is, you know, the danger of the radial arm saw is the blade spinning the same way it's traveling. So it wants to take off at you. Well, on a sliding miter saw, we can pull the blade out and make our down cut and then push back, so we're actually pushing against the direction that it's spinning. It makes it way safer. So I'll just show you one time on here. Pull it out. Okay, so you're welcome to use the miter saw for your cross cutting. I mean, this is a kind of a precision tool, and so you can use it for your rough cuts. But you know, but anytime we're cutting something to finish length, we're always going to use a miter saw. My preference is that other miter saw, just because we can set up a stopper, so we get repeated, you know, multiple cuts the same length. But eventually, I'm really hoping we're going to have a cross-cutting setup like we have for that saw, for this saw, so we can cut, you know, bigger stuff. This would be real handy for drawers, like drawer pieces that are too wide for that miter saw. To be able to cut them with this one, just precision, so we don't have to use the table saw. Anyway. This is our other miter saw. It doesn't slide, it just chops. It's a regular old chop saw. Same thing, we're gonna stay outside 6 inches. So when we hold our board, it's got a little line on it, so we're gonna stay over here. It is important that we hold it tight against the fence. What I mean by that is, when we have a long board, we wanna hold it tight here. We want this to be tight, because that's what's square with the blade. If we hold it way out here, it's going to come off of the fence, and so we're not going to be cutting 90 degrees. So we do need to hold it, you know, tight to the fence, just outside of 6 inches from the blade. And then anytime we're cutting something to finished length, so when we cut it to rough length, we're cutting it an inch longer. So you cut all your pieces an inch longer, surface them, sand them, join them, all those things, rip them. maybe you glue them. And then the very last thing before we're basically done with them or ready to router them is we cut them to finished length. So whenever we do that, we're going to cut a little bit off of one end, and then we're going to set up our measurement to whatever it is, and then cut them to actual length. I'll just show you one time. When we do that, we got to make sure we can cut right-handed and left-handed. So on this side, I'm going to use my right hand to pull down. So I'll make that cut. And then I would slide it over. Maybe if I have my stopper set up here, I slide it over to a specific length. And then I'm going to cut this one with my left hand. And you got to be able to do it both ways because we don't want to be doing the crossover move here. I guess that concludes our radial arm saw / miter saw cross cutting.